Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden information to create a new world. And today we're talking about the realm that is higher than heaven, as Jesus reveals this hidden realm in a banned Gnostic text known as the Sophia of Jesus Christ. And so we're going to be taking a look at this today. We have a whole playlist on this. We've been reading from it, but today we're taking a look at the section where Jesus really starts to reveal this hidden realm, this secret realm that exists before creation, that is higher than heaven, and the beings that exist in there, and how this realm is structured. It's going to be really good. We're going to get started right away. And by the way, I am in California. There's a lot of fires going on right now. Luckily, I'm in a place that's not in too much of a danger, but I do have my phone around just in case there's like an evacuation notice or something. So if I have to, go fast, or if power goes out or something, stick around because I'll get the computer going up and running unless you know the drill. Anyway, that's that. So, as always, if you enjoy my channel, please become a member. Hit the join button to help me create better content and reach more people. It helps out a lot. You get access to our members only videos and my free PDF downloads for members, where I put together extremely helpful written material that goes along with my alchemy video series. So right now there's about 6 PDFs available for members, all outlining how to do inner alchemy and self-transformation. So that's free downloads for anyone who's a member. And make sure you check out my new book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. I actually have a 5-part book series out right now. This is the first one. Start with number 1. And you can find the link to that in the description of this video, as well as a link to my Spotify channel. Please follow me on Spotify. Okay, are we ready? Did you hit like? Did you hit subscribe? Probably not. Do it right now, and then we will start. Have you done it? Okay, let's start. We're talking about the hidden realm beyond heaven. So we're going to get right into it. And like I said, this is a banned Gnostic text known as the Sophia of Jesus Christ. And if you want to read this for yourself, you can read them for free on gnosis.org. That's gnosis.org, gnosis.org. It's a great website, and you can read all of these Gnostic texts for free on that site. It's great. So let's just start, and it'll become clear what we're discussing. So this is Jesus talking. Jesus is talking to his disciples. Basically, Jesus is in kind of like a Q&A session. His disciples are asking him all these different questions about reality and existence and who he is and what reality is and how they got there, etc. So Jesus is answering one of the questions about what these higher realms are. Okay? So Jesus says, "Now immortal man revealed eons and powers and kingdoms, and gave authority to all who appear in him, that they might exercise their desires until the last things that are above chaos. For these consented with each other, and revealed every magnificence, even from spirit, multitudinous lights that are glorified and without number." All right, so what is Jesus talking about here? So first he says, immortal man reveals eons and powers and kingdoms. What we have to realize is that when Jesus says immortal man, he is not talking about a human being in a physical body. In Gnosticism, the primordial human, or anthropos, is a god, an extremely powerful god. So it's not until later that a lesser god, the God of the Bible, essentially traps humans into matter, that they become what we would think of as a human today. So when Jesus is saying immortal man, he's not talking about a human in a body. He's talking about a god that is one of the most powerful gods. In fact, immortal man is the consort of Sophia, and Sophia is the eon of wisdom, and considered the mother of the universe. So this is very close to being the source of reality. The source of reality. So Jesus is saying how immortal man revealed eons and powers and kingdoms, and gave authority to all who appear in him, that they might exercise their desires, etc., until the last things that are above chaos. So chaos is associated with the material world. The material world, they thought of as Hades, as chaos, as a destructive realm. And even the heavens of the God of the Bible are the heavens of chaos. And so it's according to Gnostics, this is a very hellish realm, a very chaotic realm, a very destructive realm. Immortal man is the one that is above these realms, above the realm of chaos, creating eons and powers and kingdoms. And this is when we get to the idea of eons. So remember, when we're talking about eons here, eons, usually people think of eons to mean a length of time. Like, oh, that was eons ago, or eons in the future. That's not what eon means in Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, eon refers to a world or power or being. And this is because these, it's sort of all these things at once. So let's take Sophia as an example. Sophia is an eon, but Sophia's name literally means wisdom. So Sophia in the story of Gnosticism is represented by this character called Sophia. But what does she represent? She's wisdom personified. She is this energy, this power, this realm that is the power of wisdom, of information. And so each of these eons, so you have different eons like eons that represent conceptualization, eons that represent rational thought, eons that represent perception, eons that represent conceptualization, eons that represent intuition. And so these are the structures of the mind. And what Gnosticism is really good at doing, and why Gnosticism is so powerful, is because, so when we talk about gods and demons and angels, these are all structures in your mind. These are all aspects of you. Thousands of years ago, they didn't know anything about Jungian psychology or depth psychology or the shadow self or the unconscious realm. They didn't know anything about that. So they described different urges, different dynamics, different desires in terms of influences of demons, gods, or angels. And so each of these beings, like for example, there might be a demon or archon associated with ignorance, or a demon or archon associated with wrath, or a demon or archon associated with hate, or a demon or archon associated with lust, or everything that you would like consider to be maybe like a sin or something. They're not sins in terms of Gnosticism, but rather they are tendencies within the self that are ruled by rulers, archons, demonic forces. So what eons are the light counterparts to this. And so what Gnosticism is really good at doing, because the whole thing of Gnosticism is basically like, hey, what you guys think of as the highest thing is actually not very high. That's very low. That's the realm of chaos. That's the God of the Bible. That's a demonic being. Earth, that's chaos. God's heavens, those are the heavens of chaos. Remember, these all exist. They're structures of the mind. But what the Gnostics are saying, there's a realm much higher than that. You can access the power of the eons, the power of intuition, the power of conceptualization, the power of understanding your divine self, understanding the wisdom, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, divinity. And so what Gnosticism is powerful in doing is giving you a set of symbolic images to associate with these higher archetypes. So to connect with them. They're helpful for connecting with them. So it elevates consciousness by, you see what I mean? Like normally people are thinking about, oh, gods, angels, demons. And Gnostics are like, no, eons. And so psychologically, this expands one's mind. This expands one's state of consciousness. And as another example, like there's a certain, there are different, let's use ritual as an example, because you do rituals and rituals have very symbolic associations. There are certain rituals that you do where you, let's say it involves being on planet Earth and manipulating the elements. This is all psychological, of course. Psychologically speaking, you are manipulating the elements in terms of manipulating your unconscious forces. That's what that means. But you're imagining yourself on the Earth and doing these things. But there are other rituals where you're no longer on Earth. You become the sun. You take the position of the sun, and thus now you are on space, surrounded by the planets and let's say the signs of the zodiac and the constellations and all that. So you see, that's a shift in consciousness. You go from being on Earth to being the center of the solar system. And this isn't like explicitly related to what we're talking about, but I'm trying to show you why the symbols of Gnosticism are really important, because just like in those rituals example, you go from the perspective of, oh, I'm on the earth controlling the elements, to I am the center of the solar system. I am the sun. I am, the commander of the planetary forces. So it's a higher expansive set of archetypes that you're working with. It expands your mind. So that's why when Gnosticism comes in, and it's so powerful, because Gnosticism is like, forget about the God of the Bible, forget about the, demons and angels. Let's talk about eons, the one, the pleroma, Sophia, etc. Okay, so anyway, I digress. The whole point here, I always go on very long tangents. I want to actually get through some stuff here. So basically we have Jesus saying immortal man, which is a god, the original primordial human anthropos, creating eons and powers and kingdoms that are above the realms of chaos. And so it's talking about the origin of creation. It's talking about the origin of creation. And sorry, my computer is being I really need I need to get a new computer, because it is just continuously crashing on me. And I don't know why. I've tried replacing my memory, but that didn't work. Anyway, let's continue. So these were, okay. Oh, this is perfect. I just went and explained all that, and Jesus is basically going to say what I just said. These were called in the beginning, that is, the first eon and the second and the third. The first is called unity and rest. Each has its own name. For the third eon was designated assembly, from the great multitude that appeared. In one, a multitude revealed themselves. Now, because the multitudes gather and come to a unity, we call them assembly of the eighth. It appears as androgynous and was named partly as male and partly as female. The male is called assembly, while the female is called life, that it might be shown that from a female came the life for all the eons, and that every name was conceived starting from the beginning. All right, so let's go over this real quick. Christ is saying, look, we're talking about the structure of how the eons are ordered. He's starting with the first three. He's saying each one has its own name and its own position. The first is unity and rest. The first eon is, just like Sophia is wisdom. The first eon represents unity and rest. And it goes, and then he goes to the third. I don't know why he skips over the second one, but he goes to the third and says that it's designated assembly, probably because, okay, so from the great multitude that appeared. Okay, I see why he's doing it. Because the first eon represents unity. And the third eon, he says, represents assembly, which means a multiplicity. So I think what he's trying to do here is show a contrast. Unity and multiplicity, unity being the first, multiplicity being the third. Now, I don't think he explicitly mentions what the second is, but it's interesting because this is quite very, very similar to Kabbalah. So in Kabbalah, instead of eons, they have sephirot. And so the first sephirot is unity, keter, it's unity. The second is chokhmah, which means wisdom, which would be like Sophia. And the third is binah, which means understanding. But so here's an interesting thing. So in this, the first is unity and the third is multitudinous, multiplicity, or assembly, as they call it, as Christ calls it. In Kabbalah, the first one is unity, and the third is very close to being multiplicity. It's a little more nuanced than that, but basically what the third does in Kabbalah is you can think of it taking like a beam of white light and differentiating it into the colors of a rainbow. So basically you have 1, 2, and 3. 1 is unity. 2 is basically like all the information in the universe, but undifferentiated. Kind of like you can't differentiate one thing from another because it's all in one. The third takes that and separates it into pieces or parts that can be experienced and understood. So Binah means understanding. So anyway, the reason why I bring that up is because that's very similar to here, where the first is unity and rest. The third is assembly, which means multitude. And it says from here, and so the multitudes gather and come to a unity, and they're androgynous, part male and part female. The male is assembly, the female is life, that it might be shown from a female came the life for all the eons, and every name was conceived starting from the beginning, was received starting from the beginning. So basically what this is saying is that Christ is explaining how these realms are structured. And it comes from a unity. What comes from a unity? A multiplicity. But that multiplicity is still a unity. Christ is trying to show the unification of all things, but that it can be expressed as a multitude. So you have a one thing that is many things, that is both male and female, or neither, depending on how you interpret it, androgynous. So it's like all the different things. There's a singular thing that can become many different things. It's emanating. So it shows how we can be many, but still at root, at base, a unity. That's essentially what's being talked about here, how this eonic realm is structuring itself. This was, very, very similar to Neoplatonism. From his concurrence with his thought, the powers very soon appeared who were called gods. All right, this is really cool. I get excited about this stuff. Okay. So this eon and the immortal man, these beings are thinking. And thinking is the process of creation. Thought is creation. Cogito ergo creo. I create, therefore, I think, therefore I create. So thinking is creation. And from this thought, certain powers appeared who were called gods. And the gods of the gods, from their wisdom, revealed gods. And the gods, from their wisdom, revealed lords. And the Lord of the lords, from their thinking, revealed lords. And the lords, from their power, revealed archangels. The archangels, from their words, revealed angels. From them, semblances appeared, with structure and form and name for all the eons and their worlds. So again, very cool, explaining the structure of reality, and once again, very similar to Kabbalah. So what are you having here? You're having the immortal man, or anthropos, begin this process of thought. And from this process of thought, emanations and an unfoldment occurs. And from this, you get gods of gods, and lords of lords, and archangels and angels. So do you see how you kind of have this like unfolding hierarchy? You have the eons, the gods of the gods, the lords, the archangels, the angels. There's like this hierarchy. Okay. And each one, and the archangels from their worlds revealed angels, and each one has their own world with structure and form and name for all the eons and their worlds. And so you have this unfoldment. Now, this is very, very similar to the different worlds, the different Kabbalistic worlds. So when you understand the different Kabbalistic worlds, there's 4 Kabbalistic worlds. Sometimes a 5th is included. And so you have Atziluth, Bria, Yetzira, and Asaya. These are the 4 worlds. But there's a 5th world known as Adam Kadmon. And the reason why that's interesting is because Adam Kadmon is the highest world from which the other worlds end up emanating. And the reason why that's interesting is because this is very similar to the role that the immortal man, or anthropos, has. And guess what is another name for this immortal man in terms of Gnosticism? Adamus. Sometimes known as Adam, Eye of Light. So sometimes called Anthropos, sometimes called immortal man, sometimes called Adamus, sometimes called Adam, Eye of Light. Very similar to Adam Kadmon. And this represents basically the human God, the human, not the human physical human, but the human eon, the human God. And as it said in this, you had this being that generated gods and lords and archangels and angels and all their worlds. This is very similar as Adam Kadmon then leads to the world of Atzilut, which is essentially like the realm of God, the different aspects of God. It's all filled with just like names of God. And then Bria is the realm of the archangels. Yetzirah is the realm of the angels. And then Asaya is the material world, the world of action. Very similar. So you have, Adam Kadmon, then you have the God names, the archangels, the angels, and then finally the physical world, which is very similar to this, where you have the immortal man, Anthropos, Adamus, Adam, Eye of Light, generating eons and gods of gods, and then gods, then lords of lords, and then archangels and angels, all the way down. All right. So this is all. And why does any of this matter, by the way? Because what this is, these places don't literally exist and like, oh, you're going to go kick it in heaven with some of these angels on a cloud or something in a throne. Rather, these are states of this is how your mind and how reality is structured. These are symbolic frameworks to understand how your mind and how reality is structured. Now, when I say that, I have to be clear that what I mean is that it's a framework for understanding. It's not literally how it's, because your mind and the universe is very complicated. So it's very complex. It's infinitely complex. So to be like, oh yeah, it's these 10 eons and 4 worlds and this many archangels and this many angels. No, you are infinitely more complex than what a system like that could capture. What it does is it gives you a set of images to help structure your mind, to help get a grasp of it, to help try. It's kind of like having a map. If you have a map of, let's say, I live in California. If you have a map of California, is that going to capture all the intricacies of California? Is it going to capture, can you go all the way? I mean, on Google Maps, you could. But if you had if this is 1992 and you have a physical paper map, you can't like zoom in and find a particular building and like watch all the people walking around. A map is simplistic compared to the actual terrain. Don't mistake the map for the territory. So the map isn't the thing. It's a very simplified model of it. But it's practical. It helps in a practical sense. It helps you get from point A to point B. So similarly, when we understand systems like Gnosticism or alchemy or Kabbalah, it's not that it's true in a literal objective sense or that it's even completely accurate, but that it forms a useful model for us to organize our thoughts so that we can better organize ourselves and self-actualize and categorize things and understand things in a way that's an ordered way instead of just like a chaotic mess. All right. So I just want to point that out. Some people might be like, who cares about all this? What does this have to do with anything? These stories aren't literally true. They didn't actually happen. This reflects structures of the psyche. And Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, was obsessed with Gnosticism. So anyway, he looked at the one as being the absolute, or as being the higher self. So let's see where we're at here. And the immortals who I just described all have authority from immortal man, who is called Silence, because by reflecting without speech, all her own majesty was perfected. This is also what I like. What's cool? So take a look at this, right? The immortal man is called Silence because by reflecting without speech, all her own majesty was perfected. So there's a couple cool things to say here. First, the cool thing to say here is that immortal man is referred to as her. And this is to really emphasize that these beings aren't male or female. Just like in the Sethian Gnosticism, Barbelo is the Great Mother, but she's also called thrice male and the Mother Father. So and in Kabbalah, beings are considered male or female depending on if they are receiving or giving. If a certain entity is giving, it's considered male. If it's receiving, it's considered female. But a single entity can both be receiving from one entity and giving to another. Thus, whether this entity would be considered male or female would be depending on the perspective. Are you receiving from it or are you giving to it? Would depend on if it's male. And remember, this is all metaphorical too and symbolic. You can see that this is just about the energy being processed in a certain way. It's not literally about, how we think of gender in terms of today's day and age. It's not that. These are loose symbols, just like angels aren't actually angels. They're structures of the psyche and structures of reality that we use imagery of angels in our, little monkey brains to grasp these things. So I digress. So that's cool, right? So immortal man, remember, immortal man's consort is Sophia. And it's basically, in another part, it basically said that they're basically one being. Or immortal man and Sophia are essentially one being with two aspects, a male aspect and a female aspect. And it's pretty cool. Anyway, it's this androgynous being that has different aspects. So you can refer to it as male or female or neither. It all applies. But he is called, or she is called Silence, because by reflecting without speech, all her own majesty was perfected. So this is a creation of thought forms. For since the imperishabilities had the authority, each created a kingdom in the eighth, and also thrones and temples and firmaments of their own majesties. For these all came by the will of the mother of the universe, the mother of the universe being Sophia. So just continuing to describe how these entities are structuring, forming worlds, forming kingdoms, etc. And again, this would, if they were to expand upon this, we would see that these all represent structures of mind, structures of thought. Then the holy apostles said to him, all right, so his disciples are listening to all this, and they say, hey, Lord, Savior, tell us about those who are in the eons, since it is necessary for us to ask about them. So it's a weird way to phrase it. They're like, hey, Jesus, tell us about the eons, because we got to ask about them. We have to. We really have to ask you about this. And so the perfect Savior said, if you ask anything, I will tell you. Well, that's nice. Isn't that nice? Jesus is just like, hey, I'll tell you anything you want to know. You just ask me. I see. It's kind of like, there's another part where I forget which disciple it was. Was it Thomas? Might have been Thomas. I think it was Thomas, who said, oh, can you tell me about the immortal eons? And Jesus says something like, oh, I'm so glad you asked me about the immortal eons. It really shows that your thoughts are divine or something. It's almost like Jesus is excited for someone to ask him a question that's not stupid, like, oh, thank you for doing that, and not like asking me to turn water into wine or some bullshit. So anyway, Jesus is really eager to share information and give information because that's what Jesus represents in Gnosticism. In Gnosticism, Jesus isn't like, hey, worship me. In Gnosticism, Jesus is saying, please listen to me so that you can become me. That's what Jesus is constantly being like, hey, please listen. Recognize what's right in front of you. Just ask the right questions for the love of Jesus, for the love of me. So anyway, they want to know about the eons. Jesus says, cool, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And he says, they created hosts of angels, myriads without number, for retinue and their glory. They created virgin spirits, the ineffable and unchangeable lights, for they have no sickness nor weakness, but it is will. So these eons are creating angels and all this. Same sort of idea. The different, you can understand this in many different ways. Like, for example, you could understand archangels as being like archetypes. You could understand angels as representing, let's say, complexes, which are clusters of experiences and thoughts and ideas that you have that cluster around an archetypal core that forms how you understand reality, so they're just different layers of how something is structured, how something is formed, from the most abstract to the most concrete, going through different levels of reality, from pure abstract potential to something totally complete and actual. And so these different hierarchies of angels or beings represent different stages of development. Oh, and then so the virgin spirits. What are the virgin spirits? This could mean a couple different things. Virgin spirits could mean that they remember a lot of the Gnostics looked at the material world as being evil, and they looked at it as being impure. And a lot of the times, what the archons try and do is lure humans into the material world, or try and get eons to have sex, so that they kind of become like contaminated with matter and thus can't ascend back to the eonic realms. So I'm not saying I agree with this. There's nothing wrong with there's nothing wrong with having sex, obviously. I don't agree with Gnostics when it comes to that, the Sethian Gnostics. Obviously, as long as everyone's consensual and safe and all that, it's fine. Do what you want to do. But the Gnostics didn't agree. Gnostics thought it was evil. So the virgin spirits may, on one hand, represent like purity, like, oh, they're of the realms of light. They're not associated with matter. Because if they weren't virgins, would that mean, well, that would be representative of mixing with matter. They're not, they're pure, they're holy, they're of the eonic realms, not the realm of matter. That's one possible interpretation. Another interpretation is that in Gnosticism, the idea of being a virgin means to be able to create on your own without needing a partner. So, for example, the One is sometimes called the Great Virgin Spirit. The source of all reality is sometimes called the Great Virgin Spirit. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that it never had sex, because that's not even a concept that's very low on the level of that's not even a thing at that. Clearly, that's not what that means, obviously. So what does it mean? It means this being generates all reality. It gives birth to all reality. Well, did the One need to go fuck another one to generate? No. According to Gnosticism, it was all self-generated. And that's why it's a virgin, because it generated, gave birth, created without needing anything external. It was all from within. It was all internal. And so that's sometimes what virgin, and this makes a lot more sense too when you think of the story of like the Virgin Mary who gave birth to Jesus. If you understand that story to be literally true, that's kind of a crazy story. But when you take it to be more interpretive, more symbolic, it starts to make more sense. Anyway, those are the possibility. I would think in this context, it's probably referring not being contaminated by matter. That's probably what, but it might be both. It's hard to tell sometimes with Jesus isn't giving us a lot of detail, just little bits and pieces here. Thus the eons were completed quickly in the heavens and the firmaments in the glory of immortal man and Sophia, his consort. The area from which every eon in the world and those that came afterward took their pattern for their creation of likenesses in the heavens of chaos and their worlds. And all natures, starting from the revelation of chaos, are in the light that shines without shadow, and joy that cannot be described, and unutterable jubilation. They ever delight themselves on account of their unchanging glory and immeasurable rest, which cannot be described among all the eons that came to be afterwards and all their powers. Now all that I have just said to you, I said that you might shine in light more than these. So what Jesus is talking about here, obviously the eonic realms, but the important part here is when he says the area from which every eon in the world and those that came afterward took their pattern for their creation of likenesses in heavens of chaos and their worlds and all natures. Okay? So, the eons were completed quickly in the glory of, or due to the will of, immortal man and Sophia. So, immortal man and Sophia, which is a syzygy, it's a one being that has different aspects, structured reality in this fashion, this eonic fashion. These different structures, these different hierarchies, these different powers, these different energies. And what's important here, it says afterwards, everything else, even the heavens of chaos and their worlds, took from this pattern. Meaning that this particular pattern that Sophia and immortal man constructed and generated serves as like the blueprint for everything else. It's like the template, the building block of existence that absolutely everything else is going to use to structure itself, even the worlds of chaos, even the heavens and the worlds of chaos, the material world, the archons and all that, use this pattern. Because it's the pattern of creation. It's the pattern of reality. Very similar in Kabbalah to like the idea of the tree of life being the essential pattern. In Kabbalah, the tree of life is looked at as like holographic, in that everything sort of reflects the tree of life in a holographic way. Everything basically has that imprint or structure. Now, obviously, we know that that's not literally true. We have to remember reality is a lot more complicated than that. But it can serve as a helpful and practical framework for organizing ideas around. That's what we have to understand. But what they're saying here, in a very similar way, this eonic realm is structured such that it forms this pattern that everything else in creation is going to take. And so what's interesting about that, so next week we're going to talk about the God of the Old Testament, the chief archon, Yaldabaoth, and how Sophia ends up giving birth to Yaldabaoth, this archon that generates the material world and all the heavens of chaos and all that. We're going to get into that next week. But what I want to mention here is that in Sethian Gnosticism, this idea is reflected. So in Sethian Gnosticism, Sophia creates the God of the Bible. We'll get more into more why and how that all happened. What do I have an alert here? No. Okay. Making sure that everything is fine around me. There's a lot of fires going on right now. If you don't know, you should probably know. But if you're watching this in the future, you might not know that. So now you know. So in Sethian Gnosticism, Yaldabaoth is basically like Yaldabaoth, the God of the Old Testament, is a being of shadow. He's called the dim ruler. He's not totally dark. He's a shadow, a dim ruler, because he's a being of shadow that has some light, the light from his mother, Sophia. So he has a creative power. But he can't go to the higher realms. He can't go to the eonic realms. So he's stuck in the lower realms. But what he can do is he's able to look up kind of and see the patterns of the higher realms. And what he's able to do, what he does, we're talking about like immortal man, and we mentioned like Adamas, all that as being like Adamas is like the blueprint of the human God. And so what Yaldabaoth does is he looks up and goes, oh, there's this pattern here. I'm going to create something based on this pattern. So Yaldabaoth uses this pattern to create, to construct a being based on this pattern, breathes some of his light into, because that light came from Sophia, so breathed some light into this entity that it constructed, which was a human because it was based on that pattern, right? What ends up happening is that human is way more powerful and intelligent than Yaldabaoth. Why? Because that human was based on the pattern of the eonic realms and is now fueled by divine light. And so this being is more powerful than the God of the Old Testament. And you can kind of think like an example of this would kind of be like, because some people are like, well, how could something created be more powerful than its creator? Well, imagine someone creates like a super sophisticated AI and it's smarter than its creator and takes over the world. I don't want to get into AI and its philosophical implications at the moment because I'd have a lot to say about that, because AI can't gains that wouldn't, it's complicated. Okay. This is just a example. It's actually a very interesting, we might talk about that in the future at some point. There is a lot to say about sort of what humans are doing with AI and Yaldabaoth's construction of material structure. We'll talk. I will talk about this for hours if I get started. There's something interesting there we may talk about at some point. There's some very intriguing parallels, very intriguing parallels. Anyway, but that's an example of how like a creation can be more powerful than its creator in our very metaphorical, loose way. But so this is why Yaldabaoth gets pissed off and realizes, oh shit. And that's when he starts to construct like a material body, because before it was just a spiritual body. He traps it in he creates a material body as a prison, uses it to wipe the light's memory, splits the human into male and female to dilute their power, which is separating mind or thought from epinoia or purposeful thinking or intuition, so they won't be able to reflect on themselves and realize what they are. So Yaldabaoth has to do all of these things to get humanity from realizing what their true nature is. And that's what all the stories in the Bible and the Gnostic perspectives are about. So like, that's why he splits Adam and Eve in two. That's why he gives them bodies, but then they retaliate by eating from the tree of knowledge and having Seth, which represents the unification. And then God gets pissed because of that and tries to kill them all in the flood, but some of them get saved in the cloud of light, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot to it. Anyways, this whole battle between basically like it's all metaphorical for the forces of ignorance keeping humans from understanding what they are. And that's happening right now. Like this is what the Gnostics were trying to say. Like, hey, guys, know thyself, wake up. Just like the demiurge tries to flood humanity that's trying to remember what they are, so does the forces of ignorance flood us with distractions, keeping us under the waters of the unconscious so that we don't become conscious of what we are. We're in this battle right now, not in a literal way, but in a very real way. It doesn't have to be literal for it to be. It's these are all story versions of what's happening right now. We are divine beings that are in a battle with the forces of ignorance. Knowledge versus ignorance. That's what's happening right now. But anyway, so it says, Mary said to him, Lord, where did your disciples come from and where are they going and what should they do here? And Mary's great. We love Mary Magdalene is awesome. And Mary wants to know, well, okay, great. You told us about the eons. Thanks, Jesus. Well, where did the disciples come from and where are they going and what the heck should they do right now? Which is a very practical and good answer. Mary's like, okay, great. We know how the divine realm is structured. Thanks, Jesus. But what about us? Where did your disciples come from? Where are your disciples going? And what should we do here? Which is a really good question. And so this is then going to get into some of what I just gave a little preview of, discussing how Sophia gave birth to this evil archonic being and the world of chaos. And now humans' roles within bodies in the world of chaos and what we need to actually do here. So that's what we're going to be talking about next time. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. I think we're going to leave it there. I have a whole playlist on this. This is called the Sophia of Jesus Christ. Check that out in my playlist section. And make sure you check out my new book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, and follow me on Spotify. Links for all of that is in the description of this video. We're having a members only stream called Is Technology Affecting Your Soul? Is technology transforming your soul? Which is kind of similar to some themes here. That's what we're talking about in the members only stream. Become a member, join, help the channel out. You'll get access to members videos and my downloadable PDFs on alchemy. There are 6 of them out right now, all free for members. Many more to come, a lot more of that. So I hope you enjoy that, my friends. And a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nucelina, Dallas, Digital, David, LaDonna, Grace, Kira, Val, and everyone else. Thank you very much.